Good evening, and excuse us because we are running late. I'd like to make a very short presentation in Catalan as we are here in Olot. Let's give some room for Catalan as well. I think that you will have the translation, so let's go for it. Sharing. Sharing is this year topics. This is a concept related with values such as generosity, solidarity, empathy, and respect. It entails to break with selfishness and recognizing the value of others. Is it a way to live and to recognize the other, to contribute to the common good? These four conferences, together with Bleda and Rosa, will offer us the role that image and memory and a play have, and how Carles Oliver, Barceló, and a called Arquitectura Cooperativa and Ecatón Basal that we talk about the collaborative architecture. Bleda and Rosa are going to share with us the commonplaces. María Bleda and José María Rosa, they walk hand in hand for more than 3 decades. They do explore through a very deep and rigorous research processes the relationship between places, memory, perspective, soccer, fields, Promptuary are one of the most relevant pictures all along their trajectory. They developed their own language amongst the visual and the text elements, going back and forwards and putting the focus on the most important ideas, representing the territory. In 2010, they got the award of the National Prize of Photography. Ricard Planas, he is a journalist, art critic, and cultural manager. He will be the one that introduced them this afternoon after my intervention. He is trained in history of art at the University of Girona, the Open University of Catalonia. He founded the magazine Bon Art in 1999, and he is working as an editor, also a manager, the director of US Coromina Foundation, that I'm a member as well. He's been a curator for more than 100 exhibitions, working in a writer and press, and trained in the Academy of Beaux-Arts Sant Jordi, and chair of the Foundation Girona Paquet, the Museum of Archaeology of Catalonia, and the museums of La Bisbal and many others. Before sharing a video art piece, I'd like to remember a photographer that left us, that made a compilation of Bleda and Serva's works for the last years.
Hola,
Hello. First of all, good afternoon. I'm going to speak in Catalan. I want to normalize my language. First of all, I'd like to thank RCR invitation for more than a decade is implementing this project in Olot, looking for new perspectives in order to create more reflections amongst countries and to spread this territorial reality. On the second hand, it is a very satisfying to introduce this duet of work, Bleda and Rosa. Roses are always related with nature, biomimetics, and everything that we take pleasure from. Is it very complicated to define in a short period of time a 30 years trajectory? However, something that really is pivotal in them is nature as the main character in all the creative body that they were able to have. This is the main pillar that they have. I don't like to speak about photography. I'd like to speak about images because we go beyond the device. Despite they use a device to take pictures, the most important thing is the discussion amongst the digital element and the prehistorical elements that they make possible to exist together. Very interesting to see how landscape, spaces, the thoughts, because we do have one of the most important observatories of a landscape, not only in Catalonia, but in Spain, hearing a lot, and they do know what they want to convey through the landscape. They are able to make the landscape, to get rid of all the useless elements, those elements that are not nuclear, those spaces free from the human presence. These spaces are very poetic. They do play with the atmospheres, insinuating new realities, their own realities. A reality that is always connected with different actors, such as the land, and how to create and to broaden and to give new visibility to the histories behind the curtains of the landscapes. Landscapes that they get in a specific code, codes that open new ways, new pathways to be more visible. This is in a nutshell the main idea that we want to convey when dealing with their creative body. Secondly, despite they live in Valencia, they have a very strong relationship with the Catalonian. With all the exhibition landscapes, they have a very long trajectory exhibiting in contemporary spaces and museums. This is kind of a privilege because they constantly walk in a very pleasant projects. They enjoyed and they offered final works that were edited through printing materials for us to remember. We people that we love paper, paper that is able to contain the past and the present memories as well. Well, that's almost everything that I could say. They have been awarded with the National Prize of Photography, despite I do insist I like to speak more about images and photographies in their specific case. And you can find them in very important collections in Spain, Catalonia, and they are brilliantly represented all over the European continent. We will enjoy together with them. Once again, thank you very much to RCR for their invitation to be here in these keynote presentations to face new realities. This is such an amazing way to open our minds and this will to know things and projects from all over the planet. Thank you very much. Well, we apologize because we do not speak Catalan, despite we should speak Catalan. Anyway, thank you very much for being with us today. We are deeply thankful to the open program, this year open program. Thank you very much for letting us showcasing our works. Thank you very much for the amazing introductions that you did. They were fantastic. We do hope that all along this journey that we will share with you through the most important, or let's say the most representative, or the flagship works that we produce, we want you to have an overall idea on how we began working for the last 30 years through images, as our dear friend remember, and mainly how we try to combine the territory idea, the different layers that are made by history through time, but mainly through our contemporaneity. We are always vindicating that history is one of the fundamental elements that we are able to work with, but also the collective and personal memories. We should understand that maybe all the concepts that we'll convey today, we understand them from different perspectives. They are polysemic. There is a new element that infuses in all the meanings of the word, and sometimes memory turns into history. In some occasions, the memory becomes a personal experience, the landscape becomes body. You will see little by little all along this journey presentation. To us, a territory is a common place shared by many generations where different fragments of the time were incorporated and accumulated. We are only looking for the new ways to deal with these materials and to make the different layers to flourish. Those layers that were accumulated in the territory, memory and oblivion. These are the same sides of the same coin. Everything that is inside and outside our reach are important. Things that are not represented, are not visible, we try to complete when we have a look to them. Well, we can start with our presentation, always aiming at this idea of a common place. And I think that we have a six of our series. Let's start with the soccer fields, because in the end, this is in 1992, after being attracted by a very specific place that made us to think about our childhood, we took pictures of soccer fields. This is a very specific geography. These were places that we found in the outskirts of the city or in very small towns. They had common features. These spaces were suffering a transformation process. In some cases, they were forgotten, they fall into oblivion, or maybe due to a demographic issue, the increasing levels of population, the migration of small villages to the cities, or maybe due to the urban pressure in these outskirts of the cities. These places, they experience a transformation and a change in use. Well, once we got closer to these places and we discovered these places, we stem from a very geographical close place, very close to us from our biography perspective. These soccer fields were not places where we played when we were a child, no, but from our place we lived before, as we said before, in Valencia, in the outskirts of the cities, we were able to start this journey that you will see and you will witness that we broaden to other geographies in other regions of the Iberian Peninsula, as well as in other continents as well. Once we began this work, what we felt very attractive was the possibility to explore how to represent how time went by. We did have some references in our imagination. We did have loads of pictures as references, but we were always looking the idea of a place and not to represent a very specific place. That's very important to us because we realize how this soccer field that you can see here in the image that is in a very specific place, we were looking through the different series and through the composition and the image construction, our own idea of this soccer field, very close to the places that we witnessed when we were childs. Yes, this element of the goalkeeper, the element in the series, is the element that anchors all the images. And the idea, this is a kind of an architecture, and also it is the starting point of a project that we did 30 years after. It is entitled as Res Communis, Common Place. This goal place and this goal post is in the end something architectural. And we did this project very close to where we live in the province of Castellón. This is a natural park, and in the end, what we did was to install these two goalposts facing one each other in this amazing valley. They were separated by a 1 kilometer distance, more or less. Let's see, the scratch that we showcased before is the connection point. 30 years ago, once we did our first work, soccer fields, we tried to reproduce the image of the goalpost of the first work that we did. It was in real scale, as Jose said. We separated amongst them in this natural park between two villages that belong to different countries. And these two villages that belong to different counties made us to rethink about these res communis, this common good, and how beyond the geographical and borders and geographical limitations, as well as the political divisions and frontiers, will allow us to rethink the landscape and the places. In these works, we're showing these res communis. It's an ephemeral installation. It was installed only for 15 days. And what we can see only right now is the photography register, this collection of photographies that allowed us to expand this tiny and small gesture to make it transcend towards time. This image is very similar to the first soccer field images that I showed before, and the frontal perspective really broke the typology that we created as a system in this first work. Yes, the next project that we are introducing is called Battlefields. By the mid-90s, once we finished the soccer field project, we took pictures of places that had common elements. The elements that had in common were that in a very specific moment in time, a battle happened there, battles that made history to change. Listen, this is kind of an obvious work. It's a colorful work. It's very different from the first soccer field pictures. These images are the way they are because the reference point, it is a commemorative pictures that we witnessed that represented the battle. We did know the territory, we did know the geography where the battle happened, and these offer us a point of view, a perspective to observe the history in the territory. These double images, in the end, they are like a cinematography swap that really frames this movie. The relationship between the text and the image allows us to embrace this temporary frame that will allow us to catch time. The text under the image shows a very specific date, a very specific place. An image shows a contemporary place that relates with the past battle. But this mechanism that Ricard mentioned in his introductory words, that said that beyond photography, we do have the image, right? This is what we are able to project once we see these pictures. And we are able to project in our bodies, in our memory, we are in our brain. We are able to rethink, to think this time distance between the texts and the pictures created by the images. Battlefields is a project that originally gathered 21 places in the Iberian Peninsula. This is a work that we were able to grow it, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And in the end, we do have three blocks: Spain, Europe, and overseas. Yes, we did it in 2010. We suddenly realized that we could have the pleasure to broaden a series that was finished. We didn't add more battles in the Iberian Peninsula or in other places. We wanted to create new blocks, new reflections, new ideas related with territory and the landscape. Initially, in the first battlefields, we wanted to share the spaces for agriculture, farming that belong to different generations, something that really allowed us to find an image. It's very easy to find an image that will make us recall how the Iberian Peninsula was in the past. It was very important to us because in that specific case, the territory and the Iberian landscape was a very close landscape to us, thanks to literature, cinema, and just traveling all over the territory was something very reachable to us, very easy to capture. Once we traveled all over Europe, this is something that really we do. We played with our echoes and the imagination that we have. The romantic paintings, these references were also in our minds. Also, as for the American bloc, the references were once again pictures with the big photographers, the amazing photographers that dealt with the continent, American continent representation. We cannot go deeper and to analyze the details, but we can see an evolution from the first battlefields up to the last ones that you will see in this series. We wanted to introduce through different elements in a cross-related way, new elements inside the landscape that really belong to the romantic way of thinking. A common specific element between them, it's not to create monuments in these spaces. We always travel to different places, aiming at not creating a monument of the place. These places, in the end, are places where history happened, where history changed, where history was transformed. But in the end, these are common places to us. We always try to reduce the tone and to soften the tone, to calm a little bit and to have a soothing sensation, and not to have a romantic perspective, but also to be more objective or from an apparent objectivity, to have a common place in this polysemy that we share, a common thing, something that's ordinary, that it's not beautiful or amazing or awesome, things are the way they are, and this other element of commonality, something that was common to many generations, where time went by. Time that is a present time, because when we work, it's to us important to be present there, and we are able to create different spaces through the multiplicity of different times, the times of the past, the present, and something that will be projected towards the future. In the end, there are many ideas such as the monumentality of spaces and battlefields and how to create the memories of these places, and also how after these 2 decades that we work in these battlefields, there were an amazing evolution, not only in the spaces, but also how we can interpret them. The next project that really closes the project when representing the territory is a series of Origen, which is like a journey of a human evolution, a project that began in 2003. We picture all the places since the birth of photography that really, sorry, excuse us, yes, since the beginning of paleontology, we were able to represent all the places where we found human remains, and we were able to showcase the evolution tree. Maybe this is the broader and the bigger time. We can find a place where we found a human being, how the anthropologists were able to find through archaeology, also the pictures that we took, and also the spectator that is witnessing this action. At the beginning, Maria talked about this journey that we did in the soccer fields that were in our closer environment. We were only 20, 22 years old once we began to take pictures of the soccer fields. To us, it was a kind of an exploratory moment. It was a moment to discover to us. And maybe origins really closed this loop. A loop that began from the closest spaces through the battlefields in the Iberian Peninsula, and finally, thanks to this project, we can have a global journey that closes this virtuous circle that put the human being, first of all, in Europe, after that in Asia, and later in Africa. So, this is kind of a food for thought process to consider what's the truth and how, through discovering new things, we can change and modify the truth. The origin of a human being, well, due to the Eurocentric perspective in the past, we thought that the beginning of humankind happened in Europe. And after that, after some researchers found human remains in Tanzania, we said that everything began in Africa and lately in Chad. So places change when we detect where everything began, the human life began. This is the way we operate. Take a picture of the place where we found the remains of a human being. There are 4 or 5 typologies of images. We do have the place where we found in a more explicit way. Also, what we show is this space of this sublime landscape without being altered. This is Ethiopia, where we found Lucy. The archaeologists found Lucy. This is Atapuerca, where we found the injuries of the landscape, those hints between brackets, small hints and elements that allows us to have the intuition that this is a walking space. Yes, in the case of Atapuerca deposit, it was a space opened by a dig that was made to build a railway. As Jose said, we can see these different kinds of pictures, but also there are different kinds of texts. Between these two series, Battlefields and Origins, there are other works that are inside this series of architecturas that appeared simultaneously with the previous series, and more elements belong to one series to the other. But in this specific moment in time when we did these pictures, they were interesting to us, and without relying on where to put them, we introduced this series of architectures. In this first block of architectures, we entitled this series of pictures estancias or rooms, and this is the minimum unit that we can live in. This is a room. These are living rooms or stays that belong to palaces or villas, then had a dual function and role. They were the center of power, but also they were a domestic place, intimate, where life happened in a common way. So you can see here that these are images, different fragments of different images, and we do really love this walk because this allowed us to explore a kind of image that was represented through three different plans and through three different axes, allowed us to speak about transition places where we can gather the time, and this is a little bit the work centered in these two elements, such as these pillars that appeared. And in the end, this is an evolution of this first goalpost, right? Like the soccer field. We played always with the element that allowed us to compose and the verticality through the horizon. We didn't talk a lot about it, but in the end, this really, really is transformed in these different axes that are able to break the horizontality and frontality of the image. Estancias or stays is a project that allowed us to face and to represent, as Maria said, the architectural space. Estancias is a project that, in a nutshell, lays the basis for representing these places through building images with the less elements as possible. So some of these foundations that we were able to lay through these images, these were represented since the 19th century, since the beginning of photography. Once the document these different monuments we do have here, the Alhambra Palace, the patio of the lions. We are aware about this iconography, but we wanted to change the point of view and not to take a picture of the icon, which is amazing. It's incredible, the pictures of the lion fountains, but we want to display everything towards a side place, this transition space that allow us to see the less important elements, trying to put in the same level all the other places where history, well, was not able to represent them or didn't offer us the witness and the testimonial. In such a way, this walk has some key elements that allowed us in the later series, as this one that you can see here, how to introduce all the elements that we research. This is kind of an architect making some tests in the house to have a bigger work. Memorials gathers some pictures that were made in 3 cities, Berlin, this is what you can see now, Jerusalem and Washington. This is an approximation of these 3 capital states and how the memorial operates and what's the role of a memorial. In the Berlin case, we did a journey between all the important spaces related with his moment in history and time, such as the Jew Holocaust, the night of the broken glasses, not just visiting all the memorials, but those places of the city where there is still a power of history, where you can find the remains of history as well. This is an exercise that we did in Jerusalem as well. We are just sharing with you some fragments of the series because series are bigger, but I think that you can see in a nutshell what we are sharing right now. In this specific case, in the door of Jerusalem, you can see the impact of the weapons during the War of the 7 Days. And in this case, this is the King David Hotel. It was the headquarters of the British, and there was also an attack. Something very interesting to us in this route is to see how the city of Jerusalem, it is a disputed a city disputed by the 3 monotheist religions. We were surprised when we visited Jerusalem. This vindication was not only made from architecture or from the religious and iconographic and visual elements, but it was also possible through sound. This is something impossible to represent, but that we can right now recall. That's why important the idea of memory and how it really appears. The idea of memory. Have we lived this action, or this action or event was told to us? Are we remembering? Are we commemorating? The idea of memories is very powerful, and this is our raw material. Maybe these images of Washington, these are very clear to us. We don't want to represent the idea of the memorial because you know that there is a huge avenue packed with monuments to commemorate the US history. So we escape from that and we visit those places where there are still some memories, creating relationships and links with some of the events. Here you can see the White House. There is a reference to Paul Strand, but also to the suffragettes that manifested in front of this White House. We build the images through fragments, but also we build it through different small and big text inscriptions and engravings that you can see in the images, where we can share and we can tell what the meaning of the place. Our purpose is not to document places. That's why this relationship with the text has more to do with an approximation. We are speeding up, we're almost done. But if you have a look to this work and related to the text, as Jose said, the text evolves from another perspective, is differently presented. This is series called typologies that faces different architectures, architectures that had a vital role in a specific moment in time. In this case, we talk about the Via dels Monts in Tarragona. This is the nature that invades this monument. And we take pictures through fragments taking into account some specific details that really showed that these places were trying to become a museum, but the text shows the different parts of this typology. Is it a Roman route? Is it a Roman villa? We can see the different parts of the Roman villa, but what we see is not the Roman villa in itself. We're witnessing a museum. This is a clear example. This is a Pergam museum. The Miletus market. We can see the Miletus market with the description that describes the different parts of the market. However, what we can see is a museum inside a museum, right? And yes, this is a working process that we began in 2007. We do have images from here and there. And now, well, we dealt with Roman culture. Now you can see uh, different typologies such as the arch. You can see also an amphitheater, a theater. So we are dealing with different architectures that have a lot to do with this culture as well. We don't have time and we are just showing some of the main references, but you do have an idea. We take pictures of different fragments with a clear idea in mind. We want to compose different typologies. That heliographic mission in France, they did it. The reference of those photographers that work with the idea of monuments, to keep them alive and to register them and document them for loads of yes, this is Tarragona. This is the Devil's Bridge. And in the end, the majority of times what we do, it is to work with these different typologies, escaping from this standardized image with, therefore, the purpose of these characteristics of the architecture is through text and not through image. But maybe this one, which is the final one, you can see that yes, we are showing the whole pyramid, the Fosse pyramid. Well, fighting against time, we wanted to share three of our main projects where territory, the landscape construction as well, is the common element amongst them. Also, facing it with these other three projects where the interest for architecture and to represent what we really built in the end is the engine of our creativity. And well, now I think that we have the time. I hope that we respected the time. If you have any questions or if you have any doubts, maybe we spoke too fast. We are very, very happy to be with you. You know why? Because in the end, we were able to create a synthesis. It was very difficult. We never did it before. And to us, yes, well, we are more than happy. We are more than happy because, yes, we always interrupt each other constantly, but the idea of having so many translators here, this really made us to be less professional. We were a little bit anxious, but anyway, thank you. We do have a microphone here. Thank you very much for this presentation. If you have a question, you can do it right now. Go ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you for this amazing lesson. It was a masterclass. You work a lot with memory, history, and landscape. When you picture images, you work with other ideas. You work with the idea of what is a city or the architecture expression. Is there any walk that explore other territories? Jose was thinking as well about the question. But you know what happens once we work with architecture. We really made us to be part of the scenery. We're always in front of the landscape, whether it's territorial landscape or architectural landscape. We are always as an element of the scale, a reference element, independently if we are represented or not in the picture. This idea of a scale, the idea to get closer to places in this exploration that was already in the soccer field. It is not only displacement from the geography, but is also that I'm telling you the relationship with the places, with these spaces, with these minimalistic stays and rooms, and we ourselves in the different cities. When we talk about the Memoriales uh, project, when we work in only three cities, the relationship that we have with the spaces, whether they are physical spaces or natural, well, we cannot say natural because everything is transformed by culture, despite we are nature or not, but we are always as a reference point in the field. How do we live? How do we experience? What do we feel? There are many, many questions that we introduce beyond the historical aspects that really have a role to play and play a vital role. In any way, if you allow me, I can tell that all works are related with history. Everything is polluted by the memories. A memory that's a common memory. And Maria maybe is going to criticize what we'll be saying, but this is something that happened up to date, and we are creating a project that has to do with the contemporary architecture, that has to do with the contemporary architectural representation. This is what we are doing. This is something that we are building right now, and that we should explore deeper because that's true. We need to see how we will be facing we do have a purpose when we work, right? When we work in different places, and how to get rid with these issues that have to do, not to get rid in the sense of to say no to this or that. We want to see how we will be facing these new realities, because what we constantly did in the past was to face ourselves and to see how we will be able to react and to create new images and to build and to create new images, always bearing in mind the construction of landscapes and how, from a cultural perspective, we did it in a way or in another way, and we reacted differently. Architecture is always present in our work. Long ago, we wanted to see how contemporary architecture is being represented and how from the practical arts we can showcase. I don't know if it's my perspective is objective, maybe I'm getting in trouble because we are amongst loads of architectures, but we wanted to see how everything's represented and how ourselves from our art we can face new representation models. That's precisely what I wanted to say, because the work with memory really goes against monuments. Memory monuments, once you work with memory, you destroy the role of a monument. So I'd like to imagine how a picture of a contemporary building will be. Yes, wait and see. Let's wait for some months and we will do it. Do we have more questions? Karma, please. Well, first of all, congratulations. I really loved your presentation and I loved your pieces as well. If you allow me, I'd like to go deeper and to talk about beauty. You didn't walk about beauty, but beauty is always present in your pictures. How do you decide the size of the picture? How do you decide the typo of the letters? The place you put the camera? How do you print everything? In a canvas or in a paper? The value of writing, once you showed the Alhambra patio, the images that didn't have letters, we got another image, another message. It was completely different. I'd like you to talk a little bit more about it. What's the interest of beauty for you? How do you design the format? What do you opt for, this or that, to create a beauty and to have a piece of art and not just a picture? Well, we opt for showing these images, but in reality, we always bear in mind that our pictures are masterpieces or pieces of art. The way we build the images is important. Is it important how we conclude the projects as well to us? And how to make them visible and to exhibit them in an exhibition or in a museum, including texts and letters. It's very ugly, the word editing. I don't like the word editing, but the way we deal with color, it's kind of an obsession to us. I believe that we are always looking for balance. It's something very intuitive. I do imagine that when an architect is facing a project or a sculptor is getting out of some materials to get a specific shape, you look for a balance, something that's pleasant to you and satisfies your perception. I think that we do operate through different levels in our work. The first level, a very basic idea that will boost a broader project or a series of pictures. That's the way we proceed. The second step or the second layer deals with the thinking processes, what will be the elements that will build all the series, because the series and the pictures will have a dialogue amongst them. Therefore, we need to look for the balance that we mentioned before, not to reiterate and to excessively repeat. Let's say that each and every one of the images inside a series, they play a vital role because they represent each other, having a dialogue amongst them, and they are representing the whole series as well. This is what we said once we talked about different typologies that we had in Origen or Battlefields, and how we make things happen. We look for the way. Of course, it's a very specific typology of images, the battlefields and the soccer field. This is the typology, but there is no unequal images. There is not an equal image amongst them. It's like us. We do belong to the same species, right? We are all human beings, but we are not all equals. We are all different. We are different. Therefore, we have some diversity. Each and every image represents themselves, but also represents the other images. Sorry to interrupt you. Yes, go ahead. The image that we have here right now, the starting point, our starting point is an image that we are not able to show right now, but maybe you can Google it and you will find it. is the Maximilianus Arch by Dürer, the painter. Dürer is a huge monumental painting that was ordered by Maximilian, the emperor, and this order was made by Dürer, the painter, and it's an image composed by a mosaic of multiple engravings with this a drawing of the arch, and in the lower part we can see a big narration that shows the commemoration process and the relationship between the text together with the image is something that really appealed us a lot in the past. And not only with the image, in reality, it's with the whole series. And this Art de Triomphe by Dürer, it was kind of a propaganda. It was a symbol of power that we could find all over the German Empire territory. To us, it was very interesting. The construction of multiple and the addition of engravings and layers and letters, and we explore the way to translate that it's very interesting and appealing to us in this series of typologies, but also in another project that we didn't show that we build through this reference. These are not literal references, never, but there is a transformation process between the elements that really allowed us to translate it and through these new images. We do love and we do like all the processes that include an image representation. We do have fun mingling with texts and the planning. And yes, there is something that has to do with the process and things that are more fragile, but we like tinkering to constitute a final piece. This is very interesting to us. And we do are extremely enthusiastic, let's say. However, beyond photography, we do love graphics and everything that has to do with professions. So if we have to build a box and we can do it a box, we build our box before buying a box, a wood box. We like making things and tinkering with things. And also the processes, we constantly approach the topics from more theories and conceptual to see how this series will work, and things that are more visual or things that have to do with the composition. We never say no to speak to that, because in the end, concepts are implemented into shapes and forms. Texts visually offer things, but also conceptually. So in this game between visual and text, whether the shape and the content will allow us to create all the series. This is our dynamics. Yes, go ahead.
Hola.
Hola.
I saw you taken a picture of the Martin Luther King's gravestone,
Right.
and I imagine the famous place like that already has thousands or million people taken pictures at at the place. So how do you, when you standing there thinking about taking the picture, how do you make it unique?
Hay una cuestión que yo creo que
You know,
resulta
I think
imposible
that
abordar hoy en día.
there is something
Es
that's
el hecho de
impossible to
querer
face
hacer
today.
una fotografía
The
que
idea to
sea
have a unique picture is almost impossible today. As you said, thousands and thousands of people took the picture there. We took a picture that maybe was taken. And around us, there are more 300 people waiting to take the same picture, to take the same picture as we took it, right? So we always want to get out from this specific situation and circumstances, and we want to take the picture that we consider that we need to carry on building the project that we want to build, without taking into account that we saw it many, many times. You talk about this image, but in Origin project as well, we took pictures of open spaces. Many, many times are pictures taken from a terrace that overviews the city. And loads of tourists go there and take the picture from this terrace. As I said, well, we cannot not to take a picture because we've seen thousands and thousands of times that picture. And on the other hand, I don't know if you know Andrea Soto Calderon, but Andrea Soto Calderon, she says, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'll be wrong, but Andrea Calderon, she says something very interesting. She says, when we live a moment in history where we feel saturated with thousands and thousands of images, it is more than ever necessary to create images bearing in mind the idea of creating new images. Yes, we are all saturated of images. We always have the same images. Therefore, we need to look for new ways to find new images and how to raise the bar through image and through the material of the image to see new ways to look the world and the surroundings and the environment. As for this specific example that you mentioned, the Martin Luther King Memorial, we did it on purpose. We took this a picture on purpose with this direction very, very fragmented, right? To us, we were able to create a relationship with one of the pictures in the series Origin, where we put the camera upwards and we create a very steep angle in a diagonal perspective. We naturally work facing frontally. That's the way we work traditionally. The image that we took in the memorial of Martin Luther King is completely different. But we are used to create frontal images to offer like a documentary style. We do feel proud and attracted to this style, but we try to displace the look, the perspective in the series and in many other pictures that we took. Today is very difficult to deal with because we don't have time. But let's say in soccer fields, series, there are two images that there are no two fields with a goalpost. We displace the camera to create like a movement from the spectator perspective for the individual to be aware facing the image, right? In some of the series dealing with architecture, in the architectural series, these series offer more perspective from the experimental side and building new images and working together. So we are able to display ourselves and to have a different series and not to have such an homogeneous result. So in this specific case of the memorial Martin Luther King that you mentioned, especially, and we did it on purpose, we broke the structure, and not to have a frontal perspective and to put the sight towards another place. This is the only memorial that we have in this big avenue. So, many, many times we face these issues once we take a decision to take this image from this perspective or not the other, whether they are beautiful or not, because the parameter of beauty, each and every one of us, we do have different ideas about what's beautiful or not beautiful. But you know, these gestures, these tiny gestures and changes made us to take a decision to take this way or the other, to include this image or another one in our collection. I don't know if we answered to your question. Are you happy? Okay, with the answer? Yes? Enough?
Yes. Also, I want to ask another question. Recently, I visited Barcelona and go to the Casamila, and when I taking picture there, I feel like why why should I take a picture that everybody had already taken? How do I find the meaning to take those pictures for myself?
Es, yo creo que ahí la cuestión de la
Yeah, very interesting. I think that there are different levels when you take an image.
simplemente lo que quieres es
If
tener
what you really want
un recuerdo,
is only to have a memory or a souvenir of the place,
esos
you're right.
dispositivos
You are
cada vez
completely right.
ha solventado
Many
mucho
pictures
más.
were taken,
Hay
but
postres,
there are different. You can buy a postcard. You can see
etcétera.
a picture that was taken by another person in the same spot.
Todas las
But you
imágenes
know, in our specific case, all the images in our work, all the images, they are able to articulate a whole project, a whole series. Excuse me to interrupt you, Jose. I think that the images that we took made us to be active in the spot where we took the picture. If we go to a place that we do not know and supposedly we need to know to take a picture, right? We don't have the possibility to have a direct contact with the place, whether it's architecture or a painting that we are observing in a museum or a concert we are in. If what we do is just trying to keep it in our phone, in our camera, just to see, well, that this was a testimonial, and in many, many times we never watch it back again, those pictures, you know? So this really is stealing from us the ability to have a relationship with the environment, the places, and what you are taking pictures from. To me, it's much better to live the moment and to take a picture that was taken by another individual. Yes, being present in time, in the place, being aware that you are having a relationship with the monument, the house, the architecture, and the place. I do remember that I was in the Roman Coliseo. You watched the image before that belongs to the serious typologies. The Coliseum, everybody knows. Everybody takes picture of the Coliseum. And we made a joke about it. All those people and people through cell phones, if we are able. Well, if each and every one of us that we take a picture in the Coliseum, we'll have to pay. The people that owns the Coliseum will have loads of money to keep the heritage alive in Rome, in the city of Rome, right? But we did take the decision to be behind the scenes and to be inside the Coliseum. And loads of tourists were taking the pictures of the Coliseum, man, and we have it registered since the beginning of the history of, and we put a tree in front of the Coliseum, full of flowers, and we created like a curtain that separates ourselves from the Coliseum. In our specific case, this idea to break and to build images is important. Many, many times, the fog in our pictures, yes, I'm talking too much. I'm talking too much, sorry. But you know, in the end, those elements, such as the tree in front of the Coliseum, the fog in our pictures, made us to be aware about what we want to take as a picture, right? Okay. Let's see if I can share with you the final idea. All right. Do you know, in reality, the pictures that we took, we are interested in history, but you know, in reality, that's just an excuse to travel to the place, to know other places, and to know the history in itself. I, well, this is kind of, a discussion. Okay, okay, okay. Just a second. You know, it's kind of an excuse. It's just another way to travel. Okay, let's see if I can rethink what I wanted to say. There could be many ways to go to Casa Batlló or to Casa Milà and to reach this moment. I do have the feeling that just having the excuse to take a picture of the place, just having this excuse to take the picture of the place will be a much more fruitful visit to this museum or house or architecture. I'm going to tell you how do you have to travel and how to be a tourist. But it really worked to us. We visited, let's say, the Alhambra, the Muslim Palace, but we were building a project. It was a project. It was very useful to us to be aware that we were building a project. We did have access to places that were we had to ask for permission, official license, and we told them, we are creating this project, so please allow us to be there to take the picture in this forbidden place. And I'm losing myself. Yes, I'm losing myself. You are losing yourself. Yes, in the end, you are able to create a much more fruitful visit. It's kind of funny because once we were coming back from Argentina a few years ago, and in the rear seat, a lot of people said, "Oh, the Huasi Cataratas were amazing, and this place in Patagonia was amazing," and we were like shrinking and shrinking and shrinking because we didn't visit it, the waterfalls or the Patagonia. We crossed all over Argentina with a car and, sharing places and looking places, places that are forgotten, that are not interesting for tourists, but potentially are very, when it really makes sense to take a picture of Mila House or Badio House. It really makes sense once you are able to see something and to have a narrative or to discover or to have a relationship with this new place. I don't know. I don't know. That's our humble opinion. Okay. That's food for thought in the end.
Gracias.
Thank you. Welcome. All right. Yes. To us, it's very, very interesting to see you. How do you have a conversation and how you are sharing life, the way you walk. It's amazing dialogue. Do you have other questions? Yes? Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for this very special presentation. And to me, it's inevitable to talk about a repetitive concept that I can see in all the series, the concept of a peripheria that we can see in the soccer fields, in the battlefields, in the archaeological deposits, in the architectural spaces that you take pictures from. So you don't give importance to the center, but to the periphery. What's the intention? Is there any intention? Is there any purpose? Are you strengthening the idea of periphery? And what's the importance of the outskirts in your work? We do live in the outskirts. This idea of getting rid of myths and to destroy the monuments and not to give them the importance that they really deserve. And I think that through history and through images, the architecture that made things perpetual, and architecture really strengthen the power, and the majority of the architecture that we have today, it's not the minor architecture. the architecture that survived were the big palaces, the big villas, and the big monuments in the end, right? I think that in our work, this look that was necessary, it is in the end an exercise that we feel very comfortable with. Usually, when we talk about the periphery, the outskirts, it's something that goes beyond the city. But you know, the concept of a periphery or outskirts refers to something that goes beyond the center. And in many, many occasions, the center has been the one that had just a single look, a single perspective. It has been the power. In the concept of soccer fields, the idea of the outskirts and peripheries is something very present. We talk about the outskirts of a city, but in projects such as battlefields, and how, I want to be humble enough, and how we face the architectural representation. I think that in a way, we try to get out from the center. We try to look to other places. And as you brilliantly said, something that goes beyond what we understand as a center that could be represented as well. Initially, the battlefield project dealt just with creating images in places where up to now we didn't have it, the specific representation. So all these battlefields, they appeared in the manuals, in the history books, as a reference of a place and a date, but we didn't have the images of the specific place. We didn't have the pictures of the art pictures that really were commemorations of the battle that showed the image of the king. In the specific case of the Almanza battle, showed Philip V with all the soldiers and the perspective with the castle, the landscape. So everything was a showcase to share a place that really magnified the battle. With the first picture that we take for battlefields, and we really loved, it was kind of a declaration of intentions. We took it always understanding this periphery, as you said, not only as a periphery of a city and the territories amongst different places that were uh, places of a transit, but it's also a declaration of intentions. In the castle appears, but it really appears half in the left side, and in the picture of the right, it appears a mattress that's in the middle of the road. So these ruins, these contemporary ruins, and the ruins of the past, the remains of the past, the contemporary remains, is in a nutshell a peripheral idea that shows that the history event was always a showcase from the power perspective as well. But maybe you are right, yes. In the majority of our works, we try to break the center and to look from other places. And as we usually did it from the center, traditionally looking from the outskirts, offer you new viewpoints. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you to you all. Thank you. We are delighted. So great to be in Olot. We do love this city. Since we visited Olot in 2005, we had an exhibition in a 01 space. It was great to us. We do have great memories. We are more than delighted to be invited by you and to be back again. Thank you very much. Thank you.